Welcome back to A Bite from the Money Sandwich, where we provide practical and easy to understand tips and ideas on how to manage your money better, so as to let you retire with comfort and on your own terms. Worried about what retirement will really look like? Today I'm joined by Katrina McPhee, Group Executive, Advocacy and Communication and Chief of Staff at Aware Super. Katrina shares insights from Aware Super's latest State of Retirement report, revealing that 63% of Australians over the age of 45 feel anxious about their retirement, with Gen Xers leading the concern. She explores how understanding your super, maximising tax-free opportunities, and leaving money invested longer can all contribute to greater financial peace of mind. But retirement isn't just about the dollars. Katrina also highlights the importance of community, purpose, and well-being in creating a meaningful next chapter. Well, hello and welcome to the show, Kat.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
I want to start off with just a thank you. A thank you to you, thank you to Aware Super, because from someone who's been in this industry and profession for a long time, and even though I'm not an advisor anymore, we need to do more in the retiree or pre-retiree space, and all the stuff that Aware's doing is just great.
Oh, no, thank you, Mark. And honestly, it feels like there's such great synergies from the way that you go about talking about retirement. It feels like a great conversation to have and something that Aware is deeply passionate about.
Excellent. And I'm sure this next 30 minutes or so will be great because really, I've read your report. And it's just great that Aware Super did this State of Retirement report, because the more knowledge people have about retirement and what's open for them, or the way they should think about it, is great. What from you stood out from those findings?
It's such a great question because retirement is, and I don't have to tell you this, but retirement is so much more than money. It is. Money is wonderful and it gives financial security, but there's so much more that people are thinking about or need to think about to retire successfully. So we did want to start to explore some of those things with Australians, but also really just check in on how Aussies are feeling. Right now, it's pretty noisy out there right now. If you think about cost of living or housing crisis, and let's not mention the T words, but I think there's a lot that would make people feel quite uncertain about certainly the financial aspects of retiring. So we wanted to step back and say, okay, if retirement is meant to be a really big transition in people's lives, it should be about joy. It should be about looking forward to doing things, all the things that you've had on your list while you've been working and don't have the time. It's that moment where you finally take control of your time and start making the choices of how you spend it. What is it that they're thinking about, but also how are they feeling in this current environment about how that's playing out for them. And it was really, it's quite stark, some of the results and the decisions that people are making, but also where they're turning to for help and what's driving those decisions. And the big worry for me is how much they're leaving on the table by not getting some help and guidance along the way.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there, because people think about, okay, I'm about to retire, I need to go conservative, for example. But you need your money working hard for you, because you're hopefully going to live another 20, 30 years. And this could be the greatest stage or phase of your life. You just don't want you to run out of money.
And it's not that it could be, it should be, because Aussies have earned it, right? You've spent your working careers, you've been contributing, and there's lots of people retiring today that will have super their whole lives or about to have super their whole lives. This is your money. This is, you've got to make the smart choices to make sure that you can have the confidence to do the stuff you love, not sitting in anxiety and worry about it and being more conservative than you need to be.
And you said anxiety, and what was struck me about your report was how young people are who are feeling anxious about retirement. Like it was, 63% of Australians over 45 are anxious about retirement. And, 45-year-olds, that's Gen X. They've had super pretty well most of their working life. Most of them should be fairly set up, and yet they're still anxious.
More anxious, actually, than people that are approaching retirement, which is really interesting. And I wonder if that's just the time and space to think about it properly. I think the closer you get to retirement, the more thought that you do give it. And Gen Xers are at peak adult right now with kids and careers and thinking about cost of living and housing and all of those things. And then when you've got super being your major nest egg, and let's face it, for especially young people, super may be one of the largest assets that they own in their lives. It's on their mind that this is it, and this is, I've got to make this last. And retirement feels really a bit far away, but also really uncertain on how to make the good choices.
Yeah, and I think financial security is something that, as you said, cost of living, housing crisis, mortgages going up, that they might even think, well, okay, my super might be on track, but it's 20 years away still before I'm going to get there. What am I going to do in the meantime? And I get it. People, it's their peak area of career. They've got kids, they've got weekend sport. Financial planning is right at the bottom of their to-do list. So I get that, and so that causes anxiety as well. But I just think, you don't need to spend a lot of time because you don't want to be looking at it every day, but you do need to make sure it's maximized. And I do find just even the amount of 45s, and I did do corporate super for a long time. And I always found about 89% of people just left it in the default fund. And if they were left in the default fund, they were just missing out on such great returns.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's ironically for the people who don't have the time, if just investing that small amount of time, even if it's just to get some help and guidance, or if it's to get full advice, it takes it off your mind, and you know that it's sorted, and you can, check in on it again in 5 or 10 years' time. Definitely don't want you looking at it every day. It'll drive you crazy. But over the long term, it should be a little pocket of joy. It should be something that you should look at, it's set up well, and it does grow while everything else, you're busy with life. Super is something that just grows over time. It's the beauty of compound interest.
And if we're going to, you mentioned compound interest, so it really is worthwhile just letting people know that, if you're 45 and most likely retire at 65, that's 20 years, you get an extra 1 or 2% difference to your super fund. And I need so many people talking about, should it be at this super fund or should it be that super fund? Usually your super fund is fine. It's just maximizing the returns.
Yes.
And just if you've got a fund that's got 20, 30, 40% in cash or conservative, you're just missing out on great returns. So I think people should just take a little bit of time, work out how they can maximize their super, because there's just an extra 1 or 2% over 20 years will, add another 50%, 50 to 100% to their account balance.
Oh, 100%. And you're a planner, I was a planner. I think just understanding how much risk you're happy to take, knowing that you've got not just the 20 years to retirement, but I think the thing that also struck me out of the report, which was really interesting, is people don't know that your money stays invested when you retire. So you might have another 30, 40 years in retirement. It is a considerable amount of time. If you think about it, almost as long as you work could be spent in retirement. Sure. And you can leave your money invested that whole time. So it does continue to grow all the way through your life. And that really struck me in the report, is that such a vast majority of Australians don't understand that you can retire with your super fund, and then you can turn it into a tax-free earning vehicle where you take an income from. And sort of this concept that you have to take it out and pop it in the bank, people making those sorts of decisions leave tens of thousands of dollars on the table. They really do.
Well, let's break that down into a few areas, because yes, when people do retire, it can become tax-free. When you do retire, you can still have your funds working hard for you, so they last a long time. So let's just talk about that it can become a tax-free environment, because I read a stat which just blows my mind that over 65, there's roughly 3 million people retired with super. Virtually 1.4, near virtually 50% of that haven't switched over to a tax-free environment. And that's just, the government can absolutely do more. Super funds can do more. People can just tell their friends they can do this, but it's crazy. Nearly half haven't. They're not in a tax-free environment. So it'd be great if you just unpack that part first.
Yeah, look, I think this is really fascinating, and certainly a question that we asked in the report, because it's something we've noticed in our membership is not everybody was thinking it like they were retiring but leaving their money in the accumulation phase. So we asked the question of, are people just even aware that you can retire with your super fund? And it was over 70% said, no, I didn't know that. And so,
Amazing.
I mean, that shift from, and look, superannuation overall is incredibly advantageous from a tax perspective, even from when you're in accumulation. But when you retire and you move it into what's called a retirement, what we call a retirement income account, it becomes tax free. It keeps earning, and you can draw down an income from it. And it's just that little rule, that simple move, that simple change doesn't cost you a thing, that can add years to your retirement outcome.
Yeah, if you're removing a 15% tax off your earnings or off your earnings, that will make a big difference. And really, most super funds, and I definitely know Aware and most other super funds that I've had to deal with when helping clients, you just can nearly go online and tick a box, and it goes from accumulation, which is makes sense, when you're trying to grow your super while you're working life, but now you're in retired, you go into retirement phase and tick a box, and the 15% tax disappears. Yes, you have to receive an income from it, but that's retirement. So it's crazy.
It is crazy. It's a simple change. The tax is a huge component, but the other bit that jumped out at me was people not. It's the point you were raising before about not leaving it invested. There's a misconception out there that you've got to take it out of the super system. You might put it into a bank account. What do you do with this money? And by moving it into that income account, again, it's tax free, but you also then have it invested, and you can again figure out how much risk you want to take and invest it in a way that's good for
Mm,
you. But say, for instance, you've got $400,000 in your account when you retire. That's a relatively average balance these days. If you then leave that invested, that will mean another $5,000 a year. That's a considerable amount of money
absolutely.
every year, that's going back into your bank account. So often, I mean, you raise the point about people taking income. The other interesting thing out of the report was that quite often people feel like you have to follow the government rule and only take the minimum. So the government does set rules, as you know, about taking a minimum drawdown. Now, that's just the minimum from a tax point of view that you've got to take. But a lot of our members were only taking the minimum. Now, that could be a bit of not understanding how long the money will last, feeling a bit of pressure for cost of living, those sorts of things, and just wanting to make sure that money stays there. But you don't need to. Often by coming and getting a bit of help, you can actually understand how much you can draw down because your money is continuing to earn. You've got things that you might want to achieve earlier in your retirement. So actually getting some advice about how do you make that income work for you and take the amount that's right for you, and think about Centrelink in that mix. You can actually have quite a fulfilling financially secure future just by getting a little bit of help on getting the answers right.
Yeah, and you mentioned about surprised how many people just feel like they need to move it secure. And I actually used to ask clients, what their view, and many of them said exactly that. And sort of just breaking that down, one was, well, I'm retired. This money has to last, so it needs to be secure. And secondly, there was a time, and we're talking 20, 30 years ago, that when you did retire, you had to take your money out and put it in an annuity. And so, the day before you were taking the money out, you didn't want a share market drop and lose 20%. So I get that sort of hangover. But realistically, as you said, it's your super stays exactly where it is. It just changes from accumulation to retirement. And this is what I keep telling people. For me, long term is at least 10 years. Well, if it's 65, you're hopefully going to live longer than 10 years. You want your money working hard for you for as long as possible. And if there really was a share market drop the day after you retire, that's fine because you were never planning to take the whole lot. You're only ever needing to take what you want to live on that moment, as you said about the income. And so the rest of it will have time to recover. So, yeah, that exactly what you're saying and exactly what Aware Super are doing and your advisors are doing, that education piece is just so important because once you explain that to someone, they say, oh, I get it. It took 5 minutes to explain it, but unfortunately, it actually leads to a stat that you also had in your report that only 1 in 10 are seeking advice or getting an expert. That really surprises me. I thought retirement might have been a little bit high because I know on average it's about 20%, but 1 in 10, it's not good, is it?
It's 1 in 10 are coming to their super funds for help. There's certainly people who will go to an accountant or an external financial advisor, and like that's wonderful as well. But there is, I guess the point we were trying to raise with this is that there is so much a super fund can do for you as a member at absolutely no cost, especially if it relates to your account. So things like, should I move it into an income account, a retirement income account? Should I, what type of investments should I have in the mix? How do I understand which investment option I should be in? There is so much that funds can do at no cost, yet they're not coming to the funds either. It was almost, you're more likely to go and ask a friend or a family member how to navigate something than the fund that can actually help you sort of navigate this and do it for you most of the time. So yeah, it was an interesting one.
Yeah, I think when everyone says that and they say, oh, I heard from my uncle, he said I should have done this, or some family friend or something like that, I said, no, if you're going to use a family friend, ask them what advisor they've seen that's helped them. Yeah, it's always, I absolutely agree with referrals, getting someone who that's someone can recommend a person, but yeah, you need to get expert advice. And I must admit, I did skip because I was something I really did pointed out about that extra 5,000 if you can get your money not in a taxable and moves it over. That extra 5,000 means so much because another stat that I saw from your report was people are having to go back to work because they either not have enough or they're just, and I get there's more to it. Like some people just get bored and they want to go back to work. But if financially, I always say, you want to have enough in retirement that you work because you want to, not because you have to. But yeah, people have to, that's a problem.
Yeah, it 100%. It was really interesting. It was 2 and 5. So the first stat that was always surprising to me. So 2 and 5 people retire earlier than they would have wanted to in the first place. And now that might be due to ill health or redundancy. So that's an interesting equation. And then we found that an enormous amount of people are actually coming back to work. And at the moment, that's being largely driven by concerns over cost of living and what we call FORO, fear of running out. They're just really worried by not working and not contributing to their savings that they're going to run out over the long term. But they're not doing that based in advice. They're sort of doing that based on the concern of the environment. And that's totally understandable. It's noisy out there about inflation and cost of living. But actually what we find is when someone comes and sits with one of our planners or does what we call a retire ready check-in, or we've got even a tool that you can sit on your couch on your own and sort of play with the tool and understand what your income might be in retirement. You can do it in the comfort of your own home. You start to understand that, okay, all right, this is what I need to live on. This is how my money's invested. These are all my entitlements. This is actually how long my money will last. And I'm actually okay. And the feedback that we get after someone has sat with somebody is, gosh, okay, I feel like now I can make the smart choices. I feel so much peace of mind, and they are making the decision to work or not based on, they might want to go and do the thing that they've already loved. We had a member this the other day, been a fiery their whole life and wanted to be a barista. And they went and became a barista because they wanted to do that. That's that one thing that they wanted to do, but they weren't doing it because they felt financially that they had to. They were doing it because it was their love and it was the thing that they wanted to pursue once they hit the retirement phase.
And I think this leads nicely into what else. It's not just financial. And I think, yeah, absolutely, go on the calculator. The Money Smart website has calculators, but and most super funds have it. But I've seen yours, and it's really easy to use, so it's user friendly. And I think that's a lot of people I see now. They just want that comfort factor, as you say. Have I got enough? And maybe, and you hear people say, oh, I spoke to a mate and he said, you need 2 million. You can't live if you don't have 2 million. We said, you can survive on 500,000. You need to use it to your circumstances, what you can live on. And if it's tax-free money, well, that's definitely a lot easier. And, you've probably paid off your mortgage. Your children have left home. Your expenses won't be as much as you may think of. But doing that, just get a comfort factor. I do recommend everyone jumping on the website and using the calculator. But yeah, moving on, I like talking about the 6 areas of retirement, with financial just being one of it, because you need a challenge. You need your community. And for a lot of people, we're talking before about, for a lot of people, work is their community. And if they've lost that, they just feel lost, their relevance. But of course, your health and your relationships. I've had couples who had very different ideas about what retirement looked like. So yeah, that's some area that most super funds aren't looking at, but I'm really glad Aware's looking at it. So do you want to tell me a bit more about that area, please, Kat?
And thank you, because retirement is so much more than money. And I think when we spend a lot of time sitting with members and making sure, I guess what we wanted to do is just really make sure that we understood what is actually on people's minds as they're going through this enormous transition. Finishing work is huge. A lot of the time it's filled with a lot of joy, that excitement about what can I do with my time next. And then, like we've talked about, there's always a little bit of concern. And like you, we've sort of come up with some major themes that are on people's minds. And it is, if you take the financial security side and you take that out of the equation, it's kind of, well, what do I do with my days? And the report showed us that people are looking forward to all sorts of wonderful things. Travel, I think Australians love travel. The travel is high on the list. Taking up new hobbies or, hobbies that you've always wanted to do and have more time for, spending time with grandkids, being connected to the people, places that you love. But often what we find in certainly when people are what we call unretiring, it does have a lot to do with that sense of connection, making sure that you've got a rhythm in your week, like how do you structure your time, how do you maintain those connections, the sense of purpose, the sense of contribution. And I think I was telling you a story just before about a client that once told me about how much they miss their weekends and having something to look forward to, because you don't have weekends once you retire. You all of your time is available to you, so you really need to take control of that time and be very purposeful in how you fill it. And members have told us over and over and over again of the great things, but also the things that they found once they'd retired that really did prompt them to go, gosh, I either feel lonely or I'm not feeling that sense of connection. I feel we've had older people talk to us about feeling really invisible in the world. So they do go back to work or even just volunteering work to feel that sense of purpose and connection again.
And I love that, sense of purpose. I think that's so important for people. And, you've got during your working life, you're just working, you're trying to raise a family, you're trying to work, you're trying to pay off a mortgage. But really, this is one of the things I talk about to people in this last great stage of life, and usually your best stage of life. It really can be, because you've got time if you know how to use it. And a sense of purpose, well, volunteering, absolutely, or just giving back. You never had time before to give back. You now have time to give back. And even if you didn't want to give back, you've got skills. People who are management and people who are ex-teachers, firemen, all that, they've got skills which actually in the voluntary world, there's so much need of that. And I have had one pilot who helps his commercial pilot retired and is helping his local surf life-saving what's it called? Surf Life Club. Thank you. I couldn't remember club. And just using the club. And they needed those skills that he's got from navigation and all that to help teach all the youngsters on that. So, it's amazing if you actually work out what your skills are, that sense of purpose. And it really is. I like those words, sense of purpose, that Aware brought up, because it really is. From when talking to all my clients over the years, that sense of purpose was really, really important.
Yeah, I would even, if I can, I'll tell you the story of my
Please.
mum and dad. Hopefully they listen to this and don't mind. But my mum and dad have served the community through social work their entire lives. They've had such a strong connection to the work that they do, and they really help the everyday person every day. Like it's quite extraordinary. Now, my dad is now 75, but about sort of 5 or 6 years ago, mum had retired a little while ago, but dad decided to retire. But didn't have the plan about how do I meet that same need, that sense of contribution, that the fulfillment that gave him of that contribution back to society and doing really meaningful work really fueled him. So when he stopped, I've got 4 brothers and sisters, and we're all quite worried about them because I'd never seen them sort of flat, and dad was kind of, not rudderless. I wouldn't want to call him that. He was filling his days with things, but he didn't have that same spark and the joy. So dad went back to work as a postie. He lives in a rural community. He knows that farmers are often out there living on their own or don't often get a lot of people drop past. So he took up a postie run, which is, delivering parcels, and he stops and has cups of tea with the farmers along the way. What should take 2 hours takes 5 hours. But he fills his days, it's not about the money. It's about the fact that he still has that community outreach, and he's filling his time with something that feels really meaningful. And I mean, he's 75 and still working, and I don't know if he'll stop.
No, and you want community. It's just so important. And men are hopeless at it. I can absolutely say, for my peers, my age group, and older, we're just hopeless. Women are far better from work community, social community. Men have their work community and nothing. If they may have golf or something, or soccer, or whatever they might be doing, but really it's usually their work community. And when that stops, it's a real struggle. And I go back to there, and they talk about the blue zones, people who live long, the Japanese, the Italians and Greeks. And then I'm actually pleased when I drive through, because I look at this now, and just when I go through a country town, and you see these groups of older men around these coffee shops like you see in Italy and Greece and all that. And they've just got this community there. And I thought, they've got somewhere to go every day, and they chat about whatever they chat about. But it's just so important. And I get also people do need that mental challenge, that purpose, but community to me is number one. And I just think I'm glad you've brought that up, because it's about your parents. And I know plenty of people that I just sat there on the couch and they just don't know, and you can't watch TV all day. Goodness.
No, and it is, that's the great unretirement that we're talking about too, is that, whether it's financial or otherwise, it is driving the decisions to come back to work, which is, it's always sometimes really good that we've got so much to benefit from the skills and wisdom of people who've seen the movie before.
Yeah. And so it is all about, balance, sense of purpose, and clarity around retirement. What are you going to do? But just probably as a final point around back to the financial side of it, to a subject close to my heart, you were talking about, where Super's got their own advisors, but, that was something that was really strongly brought up, that it's how so important is, you only get your chance to retire once, usually. Make sure you do it properly and get some good advice.
Oh, absolutely. And it is, you don't need to know everything all at once. I think that's the big key takeout. There's a lot to grapple with. Finances is one, your well-being and your connection is another. What will you do with your time? There's lots to think through, right? But on the financial side, the rules of superannuation can sometimes be written in ways that it feels really overwhelming and confusing. I work in it, and sometimes I look at it and go, gosh, all right, that could be a little easier to understand.
Yeah.
So I guess our mission, certainly from Aware Super, is to make sure that we can be super helpful at any turn, and that we're delivering or providing people that help and guidance in a way and that's a little easy to consume, that is easy to consume, but just when you need it as well. So we have things like whether you want to sort of self-guide through our Learn Hub that has lots of little tidbits of information where you can just go and watch something, get the facts and go, okay, I'll start thinking that through. That helps me answer something about Centrelink or about, retirement income accounts. And you can just bite-size those things, jump on a calculator, do some projections, start playing with some of the variables. Ours allows you to do that. And you can sort of start to get a bit of a handle on, okay, that's how my situation might play out. But then we have what's called a retirement ready check-in. It's 20 minutes. You can jump on and it's not a full advice as you would with a financial planner, but it just allows you to sort of go, okay, here's some of the smart choices that you can make and pop those into your thinking. And then if it's right for you, you might want to get full advice as well. If your situation is a little bit more complex, you've got partner or kids or lots of assets outside super and things that you want to take into account, then it's really beneficial. Having been one, I know you've been one, there is such extraordinary value in advice and making sure you're taking full advantage of all the rules that are available to you. And you don't need to know it all. You just need to seek the help at the right time.
And so true. And it's really, you don't know what you don't know. And it really is as simple as that. And it's not saying you don't understand this, or you're not clever enough or not smart enough. You're smart when you actually say, this is not my area of expertise. I don't know what I don't know. I will seek help, and you could just save yourself thousands and, at least not expensive mistakes. So it's just worth that effort to get that advice, even if it's just that comfort factor to make sure, no, I'm on track, or what do I need to do when I do retire. So, okay, Kat, that's just gone so quickly. So no, I really, really appreciate your time. One question we always ask our guests, that and you're talking about your parents, so whether it was a piece of advice from your parents or someone at work or something like that, but what's the very best piece of advice you've ever received?
This is a great one. I've done a lot of work around financial education and sitting with humans for the last 20 years, talking about money. And one of the things that I've always noticed with people, especially women, is that there's often a deep sense of shame that comes with not knowing enough, and often that shame and other things. And I've suffered from it for myself. You go, oh gosh, I haven't done the thing. I haven't done it in time. I should have done this sooner. So I keep kicking the can down the road. And there was someone very wise, and it's a well-known quote. Arthur Ashe, the tennis coach, actually said it. Was start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And it just always stuck with me. So forget, you can't change the past. It's happened. It's gone. But if you just don't put off any further what you can just get on to today, because there's always choices. But the further you kick the can down the road, the less those choices are. So I just love that one. It's a very famous quote by Arthur Ashe, but it was a very timely piece of advice from someone when I just particularly needed it. And then through my journey of sort of talking to people about money and seeing that shame over and over again, it's the one that I always love to pass on as well.
No, I really like that. And you're right. There is, and it's even, got a name, financial shame, that imposter syndrome that we just don't. And, we could be very clever in whatever occupation or whatever we're doing. But if it's a subject that you just don't deal with, and you think, well, it should be it's mathematics, it should be easy, but it's just not. There's so many things to learn, and you just feel like, yeah, it gets put to the bottom of the pile because you just don't want to look at it. I think that's a great quote, because, the more education, or the more we talk about it with our friends and all this, and I do think the mental health, that well-being space that we now feel far more comfortable to talk about post-COVID. I'm hoping with this cost of living crisis, people are opening up with their friends and family about it's a struggle. It's tough. And well, whereas 10 years ago, people, or 5 years ago, wouldn't have talked about it. So I'm hoping that shame, which you're so right in saying, is lessening.
Well, I hope so too. And I think the other thing to remember is financial, I can't stand the term financial literacy, because the opposite of literacy is to be illiterate, right? And that's not the case, because when we don't teach it in schools, you're not expected to know this. You might be lucky and have parents that instilled some great habits in you, or you've learned some things along the way. But things like retirement and the big decision that it is, there's lots of rules, there's lots of decisions, there's lots of things for you to grapple with. And like going to the doctor to get advice for something, treat this as just getting an expert hand, and getting the shortcut to all the smart choices that you can make. You still own your decisions. They're still yours decisions to make, but having someone have the shortcut of pointing out where those smart choices may or may not be for you is just the shortcut, like you would outsource any other sort of expert advice. That's all this is. So there is no shame. It's just a shame when people leave it too long. And all I would say is start as soon as possible, because we're here to help.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And even if you do get an education on this, in the last 10 years, the dawn of the smartphone and technology and all that, and even just the way we get paid monthly now rather than weekly, it's cash, it's cashless society. The rules have changed. So, it's really important to keep updated and absolutely accept help when you can. So, Kat, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for being on the show. Yes, we'll provide a link to the actual report, but I assume you'll be able to go to the wes.com.au site and be able to access it, because it is something that's really worth reading for anyone who's over 50 and sees her retirement on the horizon or already retired.
Wonderful, Mark. And thank you so much for having me. It's been brilliant.
Pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to know more about Katrina McPhee and Aware Super's latest State of Retirement report, visit aware.com.au, or feel free to email me on admin@themoneysandwich.com, or visit our website themoneysandwich.com if you have any questions or would like to learn more. Enjoyed this episode and want to hear more of A Bite from the Money Sandwich? Make sure you subscribe on your platform of choice so you can automatically receive each episode as soon as it's released. As with every podcast, this information is not advice, as not personalised to your own situation. And past performance is never guaranteed for the future. What we are trying to do here is to provide tips, coaching and education to help improve your money knowledge, which we believe can only be a good thing. See you next time when we take another bite from the Money Sandwich.